1781 it came out at that distance, which was, of course, unheard of in 1947.
He abandoned his search and landed. Later, he was besieged by reporters, and one of them asked him how the objects flew.
I says, well, I tell you, they flew like, erratically like a saucer would if you skipped it across the water. And, of course, then, all of a sudden, the term flying disc and this type of thing, or crescent-shaped or whatnot, was completely dropped, and everybody started seeing flying saucers. And they've been seeing them ever since.
And photographing them, too. Anywhere from Australia, where a sheep farmer took this strange shot, to America and this 1950 classic from McMinnville in Oregon. Some pictures show such detail that skeptics simply scoff. Others are more enigmatic. This is from Madre de Dios in Peru. This was taken by teenager Stephen Pratt at Conisborough in Yorkshire. Pictures can be faked, and eyewitnesses can be mistaken. The object reported here to be bluish at first, then red and luminous, was almost certainly Venus. The witness, Jimmy Carter, later President of the United States. Sometimes hundreds of people can be fooled. Many thought this apparition over the Rocky Mountains was a spaceship. In fact, it was a large meteorite which grazed the Earth's atmosphere 40 miles up and then bounced off forever into space.
But don't laugh at these people. Anybody can be fooled by a thing like this. I've been myself. In fact, behind these doors is my own favorite personal UFO. Emin. I was standing in the garden of my house late one afternoon. The sun was just above the horizon, and higher up in the sky, the planet Venus was shining like a brilliant star. It was such a beautiful sight that I called out one of my staff and said, "Look, Venus." And he looked up and said, "Oh yes, Venus." And I said, "No, Venus." He looked again, "Venus." I realized a few minutes later there were two stars shining brightly in the sky. The other object further to the north was just as bright as Venus and apparently motionless. It took me quite a while to find out what it was. It was the local weather balloon, and it was becalmed maybe 40,000 feet up. So it looked like a brilliant object, silvery object in the sky, a most convincing UFO.
Can mistaken identities also explain the handful of cine films which appear to show UFOs, like this one shot by surveyor Peter Day near Aylesbury in southern England? Or this hazy footage taken at a baseball stadium in Great Falls, Montana, which some think shows Air Force jets preparing to land. Or this, filmed by a British television crew in Oxfordshire. Could it be, as some suggest, simply an American Air Force plane jettisoning fuel high above the Earth? One of the most celebrated of all UFO films is this, shot at Catalina Island in California by professional cameraman Lee Hansen.
It was one of these clear days, and that's why I was up, because you could see to infinity, and it was an ideal day for aerial photography. And it appeared silver with a shadow underneath, as though it was metallic, and it was moving at a rate of speed, I would say 150 miles an hour plus or minus, and appeared to be maybe 20 meters across.
We decided to analyze the Catalina film. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratories in Pasadena, California, every frame is scanned and turned into numbers by Dr. Robert Nathan, top expert in the computer enhancement of photographs. His object is to get the clearest possible picture by averaging the best frames of the film. The first frame is called in from the magnetic tape and repeated on the right-hand side of the screen.
Now there's going to be a series of operations where I'm going to take the picture and start adding it to the next picture. The second photograph is being brought in, its contrast is stretched, and now it is being added to the first photograph. This picture now represents the average of the two photographs, and we're beginning to see a smoothing out of the background sky and an emergence of various shapes in the object. The third photograph has been brought in. This picture shows the average of all of these three, and now you begin to see an appearance of a strong white image on the top, and there seems to be some holes or some kind of transparency underneath here. One takes a good look at this, and considering that the speed of the object, as reported by Lee Hansen, the photographer, is that this is moving at about 120 miles an hour, this begins to look like a small commercial airplane. And one can draw the comparison that you have the bright wing on the top, the windows, and the stabilizer, the rudder structure, and that's it. The Catalina film, I'm afraid, falls into the category of an identified flying airplane.
Well, I've looked at this film quite a few times, and I'm convinced that it was a small private plane. There's no need to look any further for an explanation. And that, of course, is the trouble with long-range sightings. We can never be absolutely sure what they were. But even if it was a visitor from outer space, we couldn't prove it. For this reason, I'm no longer interested in UFO sightings. But what does intrigue me, what is very mysterious, are the so-called close encounters.
One such encounter happened to Mrs. Jessie Rustenberg, then living in this Staffordshire farmhouse.
It was on an October day, the 21st of October in 1954. I was in the back kitchen of the house preparing myself, just having washed, and I heard this noise. Now, it was just like a giant cauldron of water being poured onto a red-hot fire, but if you can imagine, 1,000 times louder. And my first reaction was the children. I must get out, there's a plane crashing. So I slipped on my jumper, I ran out through the side entrance of the house towards the front garden,